Hello, I'm Fast Lawyer. I'm with Oculus Rift Reviews. Today we're going to review and play Chiaro and the Elixir of Life VR, a game on the Steam store for the Valve Index, HTC Vive, Oculus Rift, and Windows Mixed Reality. It normally retails for $29.99. I bought it on sale 50% off for $14.99. The whole game took me about 4 hours to finish. But there is a reason for that. It's not really that long unless you're just really bad at puzzles. I would estimate the real playtime was maybe 3 hours at the most, probably 2.5. The extra time was just bugs and errors that I encountered while playing this game, which extended the playtime substantially. This might be a good game, but there are so many issues with the game that it's hard for me to recommend it. And in fact, because of all the issues, I just can't recommend it. This would be a buy on deep sale recommendation only, and only if you're okay with dealing with bugs and errors. I finished the game, but just barely, and it took me several attempts during different stages of this game to get past certain bugs. Perhaps the most annoying one was at the very end of the game, where I thought I had the game beat, and then I fell through the world just endlessly. And I actually fell through the world, I believe, 3 different times during my playthrough. I think that's quite a bit, just where you just randomly fall, and you just keep falling, and there's nothing you can do about it but, quit and restart the game. The puzzles in this game are pretty easy. There's nothing really complex. Probably the hardest thing is just throwing. There's a throw ball mechanic as part of the puzzles, and depending on your accuracy or the strengths you have, that might be a little difficult. I was playing seated, so I did find it a little bit difficult to get the ball through some of the distances and some of the accuracy required. I think if I would have been standing, that would probably been a little easier, but that really wasn't the issue for me at all. That didn't really keep from my enjoyment of this game. It was really all the bugs I encountered. So I already mentioned falling through the world. I experienced a crash. I experienced lots of clipping in this game. Just several bugs, including one where at the very start the NPC does not spawn. And I finally figured it out. By the way, if you experience this bug, at the very start, Chapter 2, Boca is supposed to spawn after you make him some tea. And what I noticed is the game started, but it didn't start at the very start of Chapter 2. It kind of started like after the first part of Chapter 2. So what I did is I reloaded the game from Chapter 2 instead of clicking on Start, which is what I had been doing all along. And then it restarted at the very start of Chapter 2, and then Boca did spawn. So that fixed that issue for me. I also had an issue where the game was not rendering to my headset. The dev was responsive. I did mention that issue in the forums, and the dev did respond and did fix the issue. So good job, dev, on that. The story itself was a little confusing for me. I think I got the gist of it, but there's definitely some nice parts, but overall it was just like all over the place for me. I really didn't understand the structure of the story, and maybe it's because all the bugs and all the issues I experienced that I really didn't get the full extent of the story, but for me it was just confusing. And it kind of took away the enjoyment from me that it was just so all over the place with this story. There are some nice parts. In fact, I showed probably the most fun part of the game for me, which is the singing pig. And I just found that number to be really well done. It really is the best cinematic scene in this whole game for me. And there were some nice parts of this game. I wanted to really like this game. It's the kind of game I really enjoy. This is the kind of VR game that immerses you in the story, brings a world to life. It has great world building. There's some really interesting stuff that goes on. but mostly it was just confusing. So it kind of takes away the enjoyment when you just don't get what's going on. There's obviously some bigger story happening, and you're just experiencing a part of it, but a lot of it's unexplained. You have parents, and they're dead. And by the way, I'm not giving away any spoilers. This is just a setup for the game. But you don't know really much about them, and in fact, you don't know much about yourself either. You meet this little robot, and he needs your help, and so you go on this quest to help him, and you sort of get at the end, but you don't know why you're there or how you're involved in any of it. Even when I saw the very ending cinematic, I was still like, okay, but what now? The puzzles themselves, like I said, aren't very interesting themselves. They're kind of easy. Most of the solutions are nearby the puzzles, and it's just either object hunting or just some really simple logic. Really, the hardest part of the puzzles is getting the throwing mechanic, and that can be a little iffy depending on your throwing skill, I guess, in VR. Overall, it was just too clunky. There is full locomotion and there is smooth turning, and you can turn off all the comfort options. So I like that about the game. But you could tell this game was meant for teleporting. There are certain parts that you do have to teleport. You cannot use full locomotion for, and there are so many pathing. There's like invisible boundaries, and you just clip through absolutely everything in sight. And with all the issues I experienced, I just have a hard time recommending this game. Even though I think, in the end, it could be really good if all these issues were fixed. I think this would be a really good game in VR. Because again, it has great world building. You have this great sense that you are in this world, that you are this character. Even though, like I said, you're confused about what's going on or what you're doing or about everything. You're confused throughout. You're not sure what's going on. There isn't much challenge in the gameplay itself. And like I said, the game itself isn't very long. It took me 4 hours, but that was just all the bugs. I would say really it takes 2.5 to 3 hours to complete the game. So I'm going to give this game a 4.5 out of 10. I just can't recommend it.